I waited on the porch, rain soaking through my coat, while my own son stood behind the door deciding if I was worth keeping. When he finally opened it, my belongings were already in trash bags. No hug. No goodbye. Just a slammed door and silence. I pressed the shelter buzzer that night with shaking hands, not knowing I was walking toward the one person they thought I'd never find again. I stood on the porch, rain dripping from the brim of my scarf. My bones ached from the cold. I knocked again, hoping Thomas would hurry. The door creaked open. Thomas didn't smile. "Mom," he said flatly. "Kettle's in my bag," I said, trying to joke. "They told me to watch my blood pressure." Carla appeared behind him, arms crossed, lips pursed. "Thomas, just say it." He cleared his throat. "We've been talking." "About what?" "You staying here," Carla snapped. "It's not working." I blinked. "Not working? I've only been here 2 weeks. I cook. I clean. I stay quiet." "It's not about that," Thomas said, shifting. "It's you need space. And we do too." My heart sank. "Where will I go?" "You'll figure it out," Carla said. "You're resourceful." My eyes darted past them. "Where's Jenna?" "She's at her friend's," Carla said quickly. I stepped forward. "Let me talk to her." "No," Thomas said firmly. "It's not her concern." I looked down. 2 garbage bags sat by the door, soaked and sagging. "You packed my things?" My voice cracked. "You weren't supposed to be here this long, Mom," Thomas said. "It was temporary." I bit my lip. "You begged me to come when Dad passed. You said this was my home." "That was before things got complicated," Carla interjected. "Complicated? You mean before I stopped handing you checks from Dad's pension?" Carla's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about money." Thomas reached for the door. "Mom, please don't make this harder." "Harder?" I laughed bitterly. "You're throwing your mother out in the rain." "We can call you a cab," he offered half-heartedly. I shook my head slowly. "No. I'll manage." Carla turned and walked away. Thomas stood there, guilt flickering for a second, just a second. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, and closed the door. I stood there, hands shaking, staring at the wood grain of the door I'd wiped down every Friday. The rain poured harder. I sat on the edge of the porch, pulling my coat tighter, water seeping into my shoes. The bags sat next to me, useless plastic shields against the downpour. A car drove by. I didn't wave. I looked up at the windows. No one watched. I whispered, "I gave you everything." No answer. Just the sound of water pooling near the curb. I stood, picked up the bags, and stepped into the street. A woman in a yellow poncho passed, glancing briefly. She didn't stop. I walked. I didn't know where I was going. My feet squished with every step. A man yelled something from across the road. I ignored him. Block after block, the city blurred in rain. Finally, I saw it, a red sign with peeling letters. Hope Haven Shelter. I stared at it for a long moment. Inside, warm light flickered behind foggy glass. I stepped closer. A young man sat behind the desk inside, reading. My hand hovered over the buzzer. Then I remembered Jenna's 8th birthday. I baked that castle cake. She told her friends. My grandma made it all by herself. I remembered how she hugged me then. Then I remembered how she hadn't even come to say goodbye today. I pressed the buzzer. A crackling voice answered. "Yes." I swallowed. I need a place. Just for tonight." The door buzzed. The young man looked up as I entered. "You okay, ma'am?" I nodded slowly. "I think so." He handed me a towel. "Name?" "Eleanor." "Follow me," he said gently. As I followed him through the hallway, the lights flickered. The smell of soup and mildew filled the air. "Bunk beds in the back," he said. "Women's wing. You'll be safe here." I paused. "Thank you. Truly." He nodded, then hesitated. "You sure you don't have anyone to call?" I blinked back tears. "Not anymore." He looked like he wanted to say something else but stopped. "Ruth runs the wing. She'll help." I reached my bunk and sat down heavily. The springs creaked. Across from me, a woman with silver braids looked up. First night? Yes. She nodded. You'll be all right. First night's always the worst. What's your name? I asked. Ruth. I extended my hand. Eleanor. She took it warmly. Well, Eleanor, welcome to the beginning of something new. I let out a shaky breath. Feels more like the end of everything. She chuckled softly. That's how all new things feel. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. It was cracked, stained. But at least it was a ceiling, not a streetlight. Ruth turned off her lamp. In the darkness, I whispered. I was a mother. A wife. I mattered. You still do, she replied. Silence. I closed my eyes. I pressed the shelter buzzer with trembling fingers, not knowing I was walking toward a truth that would change everything. Over here, sweetie, the woman called softly, waving me over from the hallway. I followed her voice, dripping rain onto the linoleum floor. My shoes squished. You're soaked, she said, handing me a towel. I'm Ruth. Don't worry, we'll fix you up. I clutched the towel like it was a lifeline. Thank you. You want something dry? Got a cart of clean stuff in the back. I'd appreciate that. She led me through a corridor that smelled faintly of bleach and boiled vegetables. You got a name, honey? Eleanor. She smiled. Well, Eleanor, you're safe here. We reached the women's dorm. Rows of metal bunk beds lined the walls. Pick any empty one, Ruth said, pointing. And here, sweats, socks, and a sweatshirt. I'll leave you to change. Thank you again. She winked. We look out for our own. As she left, I noticed a young man at the end of the hallway watching me, thin, clean-cut, wearing a volunteer badge. He nodded once, eyes steady. I gave a small nod back, uneasy. I changed quickly, stuffing my wet clothes into a plastic bag. When I stepped back into the hallway, Ruth stood with a chipped mug in her hand. Tea, she offered. I hesitated. Sure. She handed it over. Don't expect Earl Grey. It's bitter, but it's warm. I took a sip and winced. You weren't kidding. She laughed. It grows on you. The young man approached us slowly. Is this our new guest? I'm not new, I said quietly. Just displaced. He extended a hand. Lucas. I shook it. His hand was cool, firm. Lucas helps run the night shift, Ruth said. Keeps the wolves out. I glanced at him. You looked like you knew me. Lucas smiled faintly. Maybe. You look like someone who doesn't belong here. I didn't know what to say. You need anything else? He asked gently. No, I said. Just space. He nodded and stepped back. I turned to Ruth. He's quiet. He listens more than he talks. Smart ones usually do. I sat on my bunk and held the mug in both hands. You've got that look, Ruth said, settling on the bunk across from mine. What look? The how did I end up here look. I smiled weakly. Is it that obvious? She shrugged. It's on all of us at some point. I looked around. Women slept curled under thin blankets, shoes tied to bedposts. I was just with my family yesterday, I murmured. Ruth's face softened. That's the worst kind. I nodded. My son, my daughter-in-law. They turned you out. They said I needed space. Like I was furniture. Families forget their roots, Eleanor. They think youth lasts forever. I gave everything to them. Most of us did. I blinked hard. I thought I'd grow old with love, not garbage bags. Ruth reached over and touched my hand. You're not garbage. My throat closed up. It feels like it. She didn't say anything, just held my hand until I let go. That night, I lay awake on the thin mattress. The spring squeaked every time I moved. Someone cried in the bunk beside me, soft, desperate sobs. I listened. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't. I stared at the ceiling, remembering George's laugh. My husband always laughed through pain. Even storms end, he used to say. I missed his voice. I missed the sound of someone loving me without judgment. I turned toward the wall and pulled the blanket up. Footsteps approached. Lucas. He knelt beside the bunk and whispered, "You okay?" I didn't answer. He set something on the edge of my bed. A folded blanket. "You looked cold," he said. I turned slowly. "Why are you being kind?" "Because I can be. That's rare these days." Lucas tilted his head. "You ever think maybe the people who abandoned you weren't your people at all?" I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" He stood. "Sometimes strangers see us clearer than family does." I swallowed hard. "Do you always say things like that?" He smiled faintly. "Only when they matter." As he walked away, I picked up the blanket. It smelled like lavender soap. I curled up tighter and let the warmth sink into my skin. Across the room, someone started snoring. Another woman mumbled in her sleep. I stared at the wall, hearing my own breath. Slow. Lonely. Maybe Ruth was right. Maybe I wasn't garbage. But I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Lucas came by again just before lights out. "Need anything else?" I looked at him. "No. Thank you for the blanket." He paused, then said quietly, "You're not forgotten, ma'am. Not everyone forgets." "Ruth?" I asked, sitting on the edge of my bunk. She looked up from folding blankets. Did you ever have kids?" She paused, then chuckled. 3. 2 daughters and a son." "Do they check in?" "Only on Christmas. Sometimes not even then." I stared at the floor. "I'm sorry." She shrugged. "I raised them right. Doesn't mean they stayed right." I nodded. "I just thought it was only me." "It's never just you, honey. This place is full of women with the same ache." I lowered my voice. How do you keep going?" She leaned back in her chair. "We survive each other. We remember who we are before they tried to erase us." That word, erase. It hit me like a slap. I stood and walked to the hallway. My hands trembled as I reached for the payphone. Lucas glanced up from the desk. "You okay?" "I need to try again," I muttered, lifting the receiver. He nodded and looked away, giving me space. I dialed Thomas's number from memory. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. "Hi, it's me," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "I'm safe. Just wanted you to know. I don't understand what happened, but I still love you. That's all." I hung up before my voice cracked. Lucas watched me quietly. "Any luck?" "No," I whispered. "Sometimes people don't answer because they know they're wrong." I raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "Or cowardly," he added. I crossed my arms. "Why do they do it, Lucas?" "Your own blood." He rested his elbows on the counter. "Some people erase others to feel more important. Less guilty. More in control." "Erase," I repeated. "That's what Ruth said." "She's wise." I sighed. I wasn't even angry. I just wanted to belong somewhere. He looked me in the eyes. "You still can." I bit my lip. "I had a grandson once. Giovanni." Lucas tilted his head. "Had." "He was Angelo's boy. My other son." "What happened?" I shrugged. "Things got messy. After Angelo died, we lost touch. I think he was just a teen." Lucas watched me closely. "You haven't seen him since?" "No. I don't even know where he is. If he's alive. If he even remembers me." Silence settled between us. Then Lucas said, "Names stick. Even if people pretend they don't." I smiled faintly. He used to call me Nana. Couldn't pronounce grandma. Lucas returned my smile. "Sounds like he loved you." "I hope so. I baked him blueberry muffins every Sunday. He said mine were better than the bakery's." Then he remembers. I felt something tighten in my chest. He used to wear this little black leather jacket. Thought he was so grown up. Funny how the small things come back first. "Yeah." A pause. "Do you think it's too late?" I asked. "No," he said softly. "Some doors take time to reopen." Ruth appeared beside me, holding a steaming mug. "That's enough heaviness. Come drink this before it goes cold." I took it from her. "Thanks." She nudged me toward the sitting area. "Come on, let's share some stories." The sad ones need a place to go. I sat across from her. You ever hear about Jean? She asked. I shook my head. She was here last year. 63. Husband left her after 38 years. Said she was too quiet. Imagine that. What happened to her? She stayed with us 2 months. Then her granddaughter found her online. Drove 5 states to get her. My eyes widened. Really? Really? Not every story ends in tragedy, Eleanor. Feels like mine's still in the thick of it. She sipped her tea. Then write a better ending.
How?
Start by remembering who you were before they made you forget. I leaned back, exhaling. I used to be fierce. I can tell. I ran a flower shop. Managed books, employees, deliveries. All of it. See. Ruth grinned. You weren't made to be invisible. No one is. Exactly. The room quieted. One woman was knitting in the corner. Another read a tattered magazine. I miss my husband, I whispered. Ruth's eyes softened. What was his name? George. She reached across the table. Tell me about George. I smiled. He whistled off-key when he made coffee. Every morning. Drove me crazy. Bet you miss it now. Every day. We sat there for a while, just sipping and listening to the quiet. When lights out was called, I returned to my bunk. Lucas passed by with fresh sheets. You sleep better tonight, okay? He said. I'll try. He paused, then added, you know, sometimes the second night's the hardest. That's when it sinks in. I nodded. It's sinking. You'll float back up. People like you always do. I pulled the blanket up and closed my eyes. In the dark, I whispered, Giovanni, wherever you are, I hope you're safe. The shelter creaked. A baby cried in the distance. Ruth murmured in her sleep. I lay still, my heart slow and heavy. I missed too many people, but I still remembered their names. And maybe, just maybe, someone still remembered mine. The next morning, Lucas wasn't at the desk, but a sleek black car was parked outside the shelter. Eleanor. I froze at the sound of my name. The man standing in the shelter's lobby was tall, dressed in a black suit and long coat, his shoes too polished for this place. Ruth stepped between us. Who's asking? He didn't flinch. My name is Marco. I was sent to collect her. Collect? I said, backing up a step. I'm not some package. He nodded once. I meant no offense. I was told to find you. That's all. Ruth narrowed her eyes. By who? I can't say. My heart started racing. I'm not going anywhere with someone who can't say who they work for. He looked at me, steady and calm. He said you'd say that. He also said to tell you blueberry muffins. Sunday mornings. I blinked. My throat tightened. What did you say? I whispered. Blueberry muffins, he repeated. Sunday mornings. I looked at Ruth, then back at him. Giovanni. Marco nodded once. Yes, ma'am. Ruth touched my shoulder. You sure you want to go? I hesitated. I don't know what I want. She leaned closer. Sometimes, kindness wears strange coats. I let out a shaky breath. Do I need anything? He said you wouldn't, Marco replied. I looked at Ruth. Will you tell Lucas? She smiled gently. I'll make sure he knows. Marco stepped aside and gestured toward the door. I followed, my steps unsure. Outside, the rain had stopped. A black car idled at the curb, sleek and silent. Marco opened the door. The leather seats smelled like cedar and money. I clutched my hands in my lap as we pulled away from the shelter. No one spoke. 15 minutes passed before I finally asked, Is he okay? Yes. Where are we going? Somewhere warm. That's not an answer. You'll see. The car moved through parts of the city I hadn't seen in years. Glass towers, glowing signs, streets I once walked with George. We stopped outside a tall building with gold trim and valet parking. Marco opened my door. This way. I hesitated. What is this place? A restaurant. I'm not dressed for. He doesn't care. He led me through tall glass doors. A host bowed slightly and led us through a private hallway lined with velvet curtains. We entered a quiet room, dim, elegant, empty but for one table. He was already there. Giovanni stood slowly as I entered. My breath caught. He was taller than I remembered. His hair slicked back, suit sharp, presence undeniable. He had my son Angelo's eyes, but colder. "Nana," he said softly. My lips trembled. "Giovanni." He nodded once. "It's me." I stepped closer, afraid if I blinked, he'd disappear. "I didn't know if you were alive," I said, voice cracking. "I've been alive. Watching. Waiting." "For what?" "For the right moment." "To do what?" He stepped forward and gently pulled out a chair. "To bring you back." I sat down slowly. "Why now?" "Because I saw what they did. I saw them throw you out." I stiffened. "You saw?" He nodded. "I have eyes everywhere." "You were watching me?" "Not always, but enough." I shook my head. "Why didn't you come sooner?" He leaned in. "Because they weren't done showing me who they are." I stared at him. "You're different." "So are you." "I live in a shelter. And I own 10 buildings in this city." I blinked. "What?" "I'll explain everything," he said calmly. "But first, I want to feed you." "I'm not hungry." He lifted a hand. A waiter appeared instantly, set down a tray of warm rolls and tea. "Eat something," Giovanni said. "You look tired." "I am." "I'm sorry I wasn't there when they threw you out. They said I needed space." His jaw clenched. What they needed was a lesson. I studied him. "What do you do, Giovanni?" He didn't flinch. "I protect what's mine." "That's not an answer." "I have money, influence, power. Some of it from legal ventures. Some not." I raised an eyebrow. "You're in the mafia?" He met my eyes. "Let's just say, I understand power better than most." I leaned back slowly. "That's a lot to take in." "I know. But you came for me." "Of course I did." I swallowed hard. They made me feel like I was nothing. "You're not nothing, Nana. You never were." Tears welled in my eyes. "I missed you. I missed you more. I thought you forgot." "Never." He poured tea into my cup. His hands were steady, deliberate. "You said everything would change," I whispered. "It already has." "What does that mean?" "I mean, I'm going to make sure no one ever treats you like that again. Starting now." I stared at the man across from me, the boy I once fed apple pie, now with eyes colder than winter. The doors opened into a marble foyer so quiet I could hear my own breath. "You live here?" I asked, stepping inside Giovanni's estate. "For now," he said. "One of many." I looked around. Crystal chandeliers, polished floors, velvet curtains. "It's not exactly the shelter." "No," he said. "It's not." I turned to him. "Tell me everything. No riddles this time." He walked toward a long hallway. "Follow me." I did. Past oil paintings, statues, doors I didn't dare open. He stopped at a room with deep blue walls and gold trim. "Sit." I lowered myself into a velvet chair. "Start talking." He didn't sit. He stood by the fireplace. "After my father was killed, I vanished." "Angelo," I whispered. "They said it was a robbery." "They lied." My throat tightened. "You knew something?" "I knew everything." I watched the man who shot him walk away untouched. I stared. "Why didn't you go to the police?" He gave a humorless smile. "You think the police were clean? They were paid off." "Paid off by who?" He finally Saturday the same men who took over his business. They thought I was too young. They thought I'd stay quiet. But you didn't.
No.
I left, learned everything I could. Then I took it all back. I swallowed. "You mean the mafia?" He nodded once. "I prefer family business."
But yes.
I stared at him. "You're not the boy I remember." He leaned forward. "That boy is gone. They killed him with my father." I blinked back tears. "What about school? Your friends? Your life?" He laughed softly. They became tools. Leverage. Everything became about survival and power. I whispered, "And what am I to you now?" "You're the only thing that kept me human." I sat still. The fireplace crackled behind him. "I watched Thomas," he said suddenly. I looked up.
What?
I had someone install a camera at the porch. I wasn't sure why at first. I felt my body go cold. "You watched me standing there?" He nodded. "I saw everything. The rain, the bags, the door slamming." Tears welled in my eyes. "And you just watched?" I had to be sure. Sure of what? I snapped. That they were worth losing. I stared at him. "You think I didn't already know?" He stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a tablet. "Here." I hesitated.
Please.
I took the tablet and pressed play. Thomas opened the door. Carla stood beside him. "Carla, just say it. She's not our problem." "Thomas, she's old, Carla." "Carla, then she'll be someone else's burden." "I'm not running a nursing home." "Thomas, she was Dad's mother." "Carla, exactly. Not mine." They both laughed. I stopped the video. My hands shook. They laughed. Giovanni took the tablet. "Yes. She said I was a burden. She's wrong." I raised him. I whispered. I held him when he had nightmares. "I know." I can't believe I ever apologized to him on that voicemail. "You don't have to apologize again." I looked up. "What now?" He walked over to the liquor cabinet. "Now, I ask you a question."
What?
He poured himself a drink, then turned back. "Should I make them pay?" I stared at the floor. "What does that mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like. Giovanni. They need to understand what it feels like to lose something." I stood slowly. "I don't want blood." He nodded. "Then we take their comfort. Their lies. Their fake peace. I want justice." He stepped closer. "Justice looks different now. I want them to feel what I felt. Just once. They will." "I don't want to be afraid," I said. "But I am." "You're not alone anymore." I was. Not anymore. I looked up at him. "They'll never admit they were wrong." "No," he said. "But they'll remember what it cost." I turned toward the window. The city lights blurred through the glass. "I was never a burden," I said. "You were a queen." He walked back toward the cabinet, pulled out a drawer. Inside was a phone. Just one button. He placed it in front of me. "What is this?" I asked. "There are consequences. All you have to do is say the word." I looked at it. The screen blinked, waiting. My hand trembled. "Ma'am, Mr. Lowe is here," Marco said, stepping into the study. I looked up from my untouched tea. "Mr. Who?" Giovanni entered behind him. "Mr. Samuel Lowe. My father's old attorney." "George's." Giovanni shook his head. "Angelo's. But he handled your husband's paperwork too." I stood. "What's this about?" "You'll see." Mr. Lowe stepped in, thin, white-haired, glasses sliding down his nose. He carried a leather folder clutched tightly in both hands. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said, giving a slight bow. "Forgive the delay. I've been trying to reach you for years." I blinked. "Years?"
Yes.
"After your husband passed, I tried contacting your son. He told me you weren't in a state to handle paperwork." My stomach dropped. "What paperwork?" He opened the folder. "Your husband left behind a trust. A rather significant one." "A trust?" My voice was barely a whisper. Giovanni gestured for me to sit. "Let him finish." Mr. Lowe adjusted his glasses. "The trust included ownership of the family home, a savings account, and controlling shares in the shop he left behind. All in your name." I stared at the folder. "But I never saw any of this." "I know," he said gently, "because someone intercepted it." "Thomas," I muttered. He hesitated. "Your son signed the receipt for delivery. Legally, he accepted the documentation. And never told me." "I'm afraid so." Giovanni folded his arms. "Tell her the rest." Mr. Lowe's face tightened. Over the past 2 years, someone has been withdrawing from the savings account. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. I shook my head, but I never touched that account. He nodded, which is why we investigated. We discovered forged signatures. The handwriting matched Mrs. Carla Thompson's employment records. I cover my mouth. She forged my name? Yes, ma'am. Multiple times. Tears pooled in my eyes. They were stealing from me, while calling me a burden. You were never a burden, Giovanni said sharply. I stared at the pages. My name. My husband's careful cursive. Then her handwriting, sloppy imitations trying to look like mine. I can't believe this, I whispered. Giovanni sat beside me. Believe it. This is why you were kicked out. You weren't weak. You were a threat to their comfort. I thought they'd just stopped loving me. I choked.
No.
They loved the control, the money, the house. Mr. Lowe handed me a page. This line was handwritten by her husband. It was added to the original draft. I took it with shaking hands. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. Eleanor shall remain the queen of this house, for without her, there would be no kingdom. I gasped, pressing the paper to my chest. He said that. Giovanni placed a hand on my shoulder. He knew your worth, even when they tried to erase it. All this time, I thought I was just in the way, I whispered. They made sure you'd believe that. I looked at Mr. Lowe. What can I do? He slid a packet toward me. Everything is here. You still own the house. You still hold the majority rights. You can press charges if you wish. I shook my head. No jail. Not yet. Giovanni raised an eyebrow. Not yet. I want them to see me first, I said. See what they tried to bury. He leaned back. Now you know. Now it's your move. I looked at the papers again. The legal language blurred through my tears. They treated me like old furniture, I muttered. Like I had no say. But you do, Mr. Lowe said. More than you know. I clenched my jaw. They laughed while they threw my bags on the porch. I haven't forgotten, Giovanni said darkly. I held the papers tighter. And now neither will they. Giovanni smiled. You're ready. I don't know what I'm doing. You don't have to. I'll handle the pieces. You just need to stand tall. I nodded slowly. They need to hear my voice again. Not the quiet one. The one that ran our family. Giovanni's eyes gleamed. Then let's plan a dinner. A dinner? Invite them. Sit across from them. Look them in the eye. And tell them. Everything, he said. But not with anger. With power. I stared down at the signature line. She thought I'd never know. But now you do. And I'm done crying. Giovanni raised his glass. To the queen of the house. I didn't toast. I just held that paper to my heart and whispered. He remembered me. Even in death, he remembered. I'm inviting them, I said. Giovanni looked up from his drink. You're sure? I want to see their faces. He nodded. Then we'll do it properly. Dinner. Formal. Calm. No threats, I warned. He smirked. I don't threaten. I host. Giovanni. I promise. Just dinner. The truth will do all the damage. The dining room sparkled like a scene from a movie. Long table, gold-rimmed plates, silver candlesticks. I sat at the head, hands folded, breathing slow. Do they know why they're here? Marco asked, standing at the door. They think it's a peace offering, Giovanni said. They're in for a surprise. I nodded. Let them sit first. A few minutes later, I heard the car pull up. My fingers tightened. The butler led them in. Thomas, stiff in a blazer. Carla, painted up and wary. Jenna, sulking behind her phone. Mother, Thomas said awkwardly. This is unexpected. Carla's eyes darted around. Where exactly are we? My home, Giovanni said, stepping forward. Welcome. Jenna's head snapped up. Wait, Giovanni? He smiled. Hey, cousin. Thomas shifted. This is your place? Among others. I stood slowly. Thank you all for coming. Carla frowned. Is this a trap? It's a dinner, I said.
Eat. Talk.
Listen. We sat. Food was served, salmon, asparagus, soft bread. No one touched it. Thomas cleared his throat. So, what's this really about? I smiled. Family. Carla rolled her eyes. Please. Actually, I continued, it's about truth. And closure. Giovanni poured wine calmly. And accountability. Jenna looked between us. What's going on? I placed a folder on the table. This is my husband's trust. The one you never told me about. Thomas went pale. What? Don't lie, I said. Mr. Lowe explained everything. I didn't. You signed for it, then buried it. Carla scoffed. That's a stretch. Is this a stretch? Giovanni slid a tablet across the table. Watch. The screen lit up. Thomas and Carla at the front door. Carla laughing. Thomas tossing my bags onto the porch. Carla's fork clattered. You filmed us. No, Giovanni said. You filmed yourselves. I just collected it. Thomas stood. You had no right. I had every right, I said. That was my house. My trust. My name. Jenna looked panicked. What is this?
Mom.
Giovanni leaned back. Your mom forged your grandmother's signature to drain her account. Your dad let it happen. Thomas shouted, You don't know anything. I know enough, Giovanni replied calmly. I know my nonna lived in a shelter while you lived off her money. Carla stood too. You're not the law. No, Giovanni said, but I know people who are. Marco stepped forward from the shadows, silent, intimidating. Thomas sat down slowly. What do you want? I stared at them. I want my house back. Carla blinked. Excuse me? You have 72 hours to vacate the property. It's legally mine. Always was. Jenna looked at me. You're kicking us out? No, I said softly. You already kicked me out. I'm just returning the favor with paperwork. Carla turned red. This is insane. What's insane? I said coldly, is calling your own mother-in-law a burden while stealing from her behind her back. Giovanni poured more wine. You should read the trust. It's beautiful. My grandfather wrote, Eleanor shall remain the queen of this house. Thomas rubbed his face. Mom, please. Don't do this. You did this, I said. When you chose silence.
When you let her lie.
When you forgot who I was. Carla's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. I stood slowly.
No.
You will. I stepped through the front door slowly. The hinges creaked, but the air felt different, lighter, somehow. The living room was empty. No furniture. No noise. Just sunlight spilling across the wooden floor like an apology. Giovanni stood beside me. You okay? I nodded. It's strange how silence can feel peaceful after feeling like punishment. He smiled. It's yours again. Every inch. I remember when George and I laid these tiles ourselves. We had no money, just stubbornness and glue. You built more than a house. I stepped forward. Now I get to live in it, without shame. You never should have had any. I turned to him. Thank you, Giovanni. For what? For not forgetting me. He squeezed my hand. You raised me. I was never going to forget. I looked around. Is anyone living here now? There's someone I hired. Full-time caretaker. Lives in the guest room. She's good. Does she talk a lot? He chuckled. Only if you do. Just then, the back door opened and a woman stepped inside holding a basket of eggs. Eleanor, she said, blinking. I gasped. Marla. She set the basket down and rushed toward me. It is you. I embraced her tightly. I didn't know you were the caretaker. Giovanni reached out a few days ago. Said he needed someone he could trust. I can't believe it's you. Marla pulled back, eyes teary. I always said this house would be yours again. I didn't believe it until now. She smiled.
Come.
I've got the kettle on. We sat at the kitchen table, just like old times. The room smelled like chamomile and sunflowers. I planted some roses out back, she said. Roses. I laughed. I used to kill every plant I touched. Well, now you've got help. We sipped quietly for a moment. I missed this, I said. I missed you. I didn't think anyone noticed I was gone. Oh, Eleanor. People noticed. They just didn't know how to act. I tilted my head. What do you mean? You were too proud to ask. They were too cowardly to offer. I stared at my mug. That sounds about right. She reached across the table. But you're home now. That's what matters.
The doorbell rang.
Marla stood. I'll get it. A few seconds later, familiar footsteps entered. Lucas. I said, surprised. He smiled. Hey. What are you doing here? I heard through the grapevine you reclaimed your throne. I laughed. You worked in a shelter. What grapevine? He shrugged. Let's just say I used to work security for a certain young man with expensive tastes. I blinked. You worked for Giovanni? Off the record. You never said. Didn't want to influence your opinion. I smiled. You didn't have to. You were kind when I needed it most. He leaned against the counter. He never forgot you, you know. I didn't know he even remembered me. He checked on you often. Never interfered unless necessary. But when you hit rock bottom, he moved fast. Tears welled in my eyes. I owe him so much. You gave him everything first. Marla returned with cookies. Well, if this is turning into a party, someone better help me prune those roses later. I'll help, Lucas said. Since when do you garden? I teased. Since 5 minutes ago. We all laughed. Later, I stepped outside into the backyard. The roses were in bloom, bright, defiant, reaching toward the sun. Marla joined me. They suit you. I knelt beside one and touched its petals. Delicate, but dangerous. She nodded. Exactly. Across the fence, a neighbor peeked out. Another watched from their porch. I stood tall. Let them see me. Marla noticed. They're surprised. I want them to be. They thought you disappeared. I did, but I came back. And stronger. I wiped my hands on my skirt. I'll never be silent again. Lucas walked up with gloves. Ready for war, ma'am? No, I said. Ready for peace. But only if it's earned. We dug together, planting a new bed along the walkway. The sun dipped lower, shadows growing long. Marla handed me a fresh bulb. This one's yellow. Your favorite. I used to say it reminded me of hope. It still can. As we worked, the front gate creaked. I turned. A sleek black car had pulled into the drive. The engine went silent. The back door opened. Thomas stepped out, holding a letter in his shaking hand. Thomas stood by the rose bushes, envelope in hand, like he didn't know how to step forward. Marla whispered, Want me to ask him to leave? No, I said. Let's see what he has to say. He walked slowly, his eyes heavy, shirt wrinkled like he hadn't slept. I didn't come to fight, he said quietly. I figured, I replied. He held out the envelope. It's from me. Just read it, please. I took it and tucked it into my pocket without opening it. You could have said it in person. I didn't think you'd want to hear my voice. I said nothing. I'm leaving, he continued. Carla moved out. Took whatever she could. I'm not surprised. Jenna's cut contact with both of us. Says we're toxic. I looked past him toward the gate. And I deserve it, he admitted. Yes, I said.
He winced.
I didn't know how to be a son. Not to you. You knew how to be a liar. A coward. A thief. He swallowed hard. I didn't steal. You let her forge my name. I didn't know at first, but you knew later. He nodded. I did. I crossed my arms. And you stayed quiet. I was afraid. Of her. Of what it would cost me. I scoffed. And what did it cost me, Thomas? He blinked quickly. Everything. That's right. Silence. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he whispered. I looked at him. You say that like it's supposed to erase what you did. It won't. I know. You left your mother on a porch in the rain. He nodded, ashamed. I replay it every night.
Good.
He hesitated. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I no longer protect your shame. Tears gathered in his eyes. You deserved better. I gave you everything. I know. And you chose comfort over love. I know. I stepped back. Then live with it. Don't drag it to my doorstep again. I won't. He looked at the house one last time. It was never ours. We just borrowed it.
No.
You stole it, then called me a burden. I regret every word. You'll regret more, Thomas. Every empty room, every missed birthday, every quiet phone. He nodded slowly. I just wanted you to know. I stared into his eyes. I knew already. He turned, shoulders hunched, and walked away. Later that week, Giovanni's office smelled like cedar and espresso. He looked up as I walked in. How was the garden today? Peaceful, I said, closing the door behind me. Thomas.
Gone.
Letter still sealed. You didn't read it? No need. His silence was louder. Giovanni stood and opened his arms. Come here. I stepped into the hug, letting his arms wrap around me like armor. I'll protect you always, Nana. I don't need protecting anymore, I said softly. He pulled back, smiling. You sure? I nodded. I've found something better. Which is? Strength. He poured 2 cups of coffee. To new beginnings? To old roots, I said, finding their way back. He handed me a cup. What will you do now? I've got plans. Dangerous ones? Hopeful ones. He raised a brow. Do tell. I stood in front of the shelter, the red sign peeling just as I remembered. My palms were dry this time. No suitcase. No desperation. Inside, Ruth smiled the second she saw me. Well, she said. Look who's walking tall. I told you I'd be back. You did. But I didn't think it'd be with a clipboard and a badge. I held up the volunteer tag. They said they needed someone who understood. And you do, she said proudly. Better than most. Lucas came out from the back, eyes lighting up. You here for the afternoon shift. Every Thursday. He handed me a schedule. We've got a few new women. Scared. Quiet. I used to be that way. Not anymore. I sat with the first guest. Her hands were shaking, eyes red. Want some tea? I asked. She nodded. I'll get it, Lucas said. I turned back to her. What's your name?
Dina.
Nice to meet you, Dina. I'm Eleanor. She looked down. I don't know what to do.
You don't have to know yet, I said gently.
You just have to breathe. She nodded, eyes welling up. I used to sit right there. I whispered. Same bunk. Same questions. Her eyes widened. You were?
Yes.
But now I'm here. With you. Lucas handed her the tea. She smiled faintly. Thank you. I touched her shoulder. One day, you'll walk back in here too. Not as a guest, but as someone who made it through. She whispered. You think so? I know so. I stood up, took a breath, and walked toward the hallway. The same hallway I'd once stumbled through with wet shoes and a breaking heart. Now I walked steady. No fear. No shame. I walked back to the shelter, not as a guest this time, but as someone who survived and then truly lived. If this story hit home, hit subscribe and tell us. Would you have forgiven them or walked away for good?